Okay, continuing from where I left, the important thing that needs to be addressed is how many of you in this class have actually started formulating your project and preparing what we call a research proposal. Now, if you haven't decided the subject of your research, if you haven't yet known what you're going to research on, there is no question of a literature review. At the most that you could do is to prepare an article on the benefits of literature review, what it is it supposed to do, what is not expected of it, how do you go about doing a literature review, and what are the kind of material you review when you do a literature review, and so on and so forth. So my request is, those of you who haven't started your researches yet, you must meet with the faculty, with the professor. He's a very understanding man, and explain to him that you are in no position to complete your literature review within the given time. However, you can assure him that once you decide your research topic, within about, let's say, a decent period of about 2 or 4 weeks, you will be able to read up a lot of literature and then be able to write a literature review of the kind that he expects. Of course, it won't be a perfect, it won't be a comprehensive or an exhaustive review, but all the same, it will be able to meet the expectations of the professor. Now, those of you who have decided on the research topic but don't know where to go and look for material, the first place you should head is the library. As you go to the library, you will not immediately be able to identify what books to read, what journals to read. So go and speak to the librarians over there, the assistant librarian. Today, I accompanied 2 students from the batch, and they went and sat with the assistant librarian and told her what exactly they are looking for, and she was able to get into the system and tell them that, look, these are the articles and journals that are available on this subject, and you can have access from your own home. And the entire step-by-step approach was explained to them. However, there is a lot of material that cannot be accessed remotely but can be accessed from within the library. For example, the Oxford University Press or the Cambridge Press. There is a lot of material that's available. Much of it is available offline as well. So head to the library. Before that, decide your research topic. Head to the library, sit with the assistant librarian, speak to people who are already in the course that you are doing, your seniors, and ask them what best you could do to be able to select these books. Go look up books on the subject, search for the books. The library is so well equipped, it's so modern, and it provides a whole variety of services to you. You can also go down onto the internet and search for authors, search for books that have been written on this subject. You can Google it, you can go down to Amazon, and you can search on those titles. After you have identified them, start reading them up. And while you're reading, please make your notes. There's no point in just reading a book and then planning to do a literature review. Okay, now let's assume you've done the reading. Let's assume you've already looked up half a dozen books, a dozen research articles. You've also read some unpublished theses. Your professor has given you certain theses that have already been completed by the students of IIUM, and you browse them. As you keep reading them, start making your notes. Put them up in post-its, like I do over here. Or what you could do is, give me a minute, I'll show you what I've been doing. I keep making notes, different pages. I put these post-its and say, okay, this is what is dealt with in this page. All right, okay, this is fine. This is the mention of Iqbal in this book, but I couldn't find the mention in another book, and so on and so forth. More importantly, you must make notes as to what you believe you are not able to find. A quick way, of course, is to go to the index and then look up the index. And well, if you're looking for certain things like, okay, what am I looking for? The Red Crescent medical mission that went to Turkey from India. It's on page 23 to 24 and 30, 34, 45 to 46. I read up on that and then I go and compare similar mentions of this particular event in another book. And then I see which book is more exhaustive on the subject. It's also interesting to read up books which are in some way or the other related to this. For example, I was writing on the Indian contributions in terms of, like I told you in my first clip, how the Indians lobbied support for the Turks so that they could get a fair deal after the defeat in the First World War because of the mistake of supporting Germany. So once you do all that, all you need to now do is to put it down and say, okay, I read this book in relation to my subject, and this book deals with the Indian contributions in an exhaustive way. However, it starts from 1919 and there is no mention about any contribution before 1919, and you could again mention that there in this book, even though it covers from 1919 to 1924, there is no mention virtually about what the Muslims in the southern provinces of India did. Then you look up another book and say, okay, this book does cover about it, but it doesn't go into too many details. This way, you must mention about each book you read and what you find are the strong points in this book, what are the weak points in this book, and perhaps in the end you summarize it by saying, after the review of these many books, I noticed that there wasn't this mention about that particular important event that took place in this particular city, which I know anecdotally this was told to me by so many different sources, and I could find mention of this in non-research articles and in unrelated books. So then you start making your case for the research and you start documenting what you really found out which was not available in the existing texts. You could also point out to what you perceive to be inconsistencies and how you could reconcile them. For example, again, Minalt has said certain things about the madrasa system in India. When I checked with people from the same region, they said, no, this is not true. So you could point this out as one of the inconsistencies in the book. I could go into details, but the video would be too long for that. But to summarize, if you have not decided your subject, your topic for the research, then you cannot do a literature review. All you could do is write an article on the importance of a literature review in helping a student prepare for his research or prepare his research proposal as such. The other thing, of course, is the method I'm telling you is to write a brief review of each book. However, there are methods which people recommend where you do not go down and review each book separately, but you take a subject of your research and say that this book mentions this book mentions this related to this subject, and I read this information from this book. However, related to my chapter number 3, I did not find any mention anywhere. Then you take up another chapter and then you mention the literature you reviewed vis-a-vis this particular chapter. There are many different methods, but for the sake of the assignment, I'm sure your professor would be delighted if you could simply mention book by book a quick summary of what the book contains, and if you find any inconsistencies in that, you mention that as well. And if you, for example, find what you call material that is missing, you mention that as well. There was a student who said, then how different is a critical review of, let's say, Alan Byron's book from a literature review? In Alan Byron's book, you're not comparing it with your research topic. For example, you're reading chapter 3 of Alan Byron and you're saying, look, he doesn't cover research design like phenomenology, or for example a narrative, and his focus has been more towards quantitative research and very less towards qualitative research. You're actually reviewing the content of the book and finding out what's missing in the book, not in relation to your research topic. I hope this will do. I'm exhausted. I've had a lot of classes to take today. Thank you for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.